Cool for the summer. Don't tell your mother. No chance. No way. Do you see that as a demigod reference? Because Hercules, demigod, Demi Lovato. Never mind. No. That, not that Demi. Not. No, stop it.
This is a real.
I swear to God, there's gonna be a copyright claim. Hello and welcome back to What's a Safeword. I'm Amp, and today we are talking about demisexuality. No, I'm not attracted to Demi Lovato, although some of those songs are bops. And no, I'm not attracted to Demi Moore movies either, although Ghost was great.
You in danger, girl.
What else was she in? Oh, G.I. Jane was a thing.
What are you talking about?
Or maybe you think I just really like Final Fantasy attacks. Demi in Final Fantasy at level 2, I believe, did take down 50% of someone's health, so maybe that's my special move in bed. I mean, it does have to do with fantasies. Would you turn off the Demi Lovato? No, today I'm talking about something that I identify with and have identified with for a long time, but has been more relevant recently with the whole pride discourse that happened a few weeks back. Are we ready to come out for a third time on the internet? I mean, first I was gay, then I was kinky, and now I'm demisexual. So like, great. And lots of people on Twitter wanted me to talk about being demisexual because I not only talk about sex education a bunch, which you would imagine you need to be really, really sexual to do, which is not the case. And I've also done sex work, which is a really interesting kind of perspective that I do want to dive into today, while we also talk about what demisexuality is, because it is a very new term when it comes to identifying yourself, identities, and it's a part of the asexual spectrum that some people are still very confused about. But more than anything, I really just think people wanted to know how my brain works, because my brain works in very mysterious ways. So the term demisexual has that prefix of demi, which means halfway, being halfway between asexual, or not having sexual attraction, and allosexual, which is having sexual attraction. Demisexuality is an orientation in which someone only forms a sexual attraction after forming an emotional bond. AKA my stranger danger's on high alert! But in all reality, like, I don't generally just want to have sex with strangers, which is fine if that's your thing, but like, I want to know a little bit about you. And demi can be combined with other orientations, meaning you can be a demi guy, a demi gal, a demi non-binary pal, or a bi-demi, gay, straight, trans demi. You can add this to your other orientations and labels to help you identify and voice what you're into and how you're into it. Now, being demisexual, you can also be referred to as demi or demisexual or demi-romantic, or hey, you're that one guy that makes the weird internet videos on YouTube and you talk about yourself way too much and ha 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 ha. Which, true story, was an actual message I got on a dating app once. It was real weird. But hey, dating apps are also important to this story because I experienced those very differently as well. Also, can we talk about how Twitch just added a demisexual tag? Which, like, come on, representation. Thank you, Twitch. Follow us on Twitch. And the term was coined in 2006. So while it appears super new, it's actually been around for a while. And it was first used on the forums of the Asexuality Visibility Education Network, or AVEN, by a user, Son of Zeal. Anyway, in the first use of this term, it was just described as somebody who didn't have sexual attraction without emotional bonds. Simple. And I knew a thing about bonds. Ooh, that was a kinky joke. We'll get into that as well. Now, for those who are keeping track, I identify as a gay, kinky, poly, cisgendered, demisexual guy. But you can just call me Amp for short. And so for me, demisexuality is about how I want to experience that sexual attraction, not who I want to experience that attraction with. And that becomes part of the conversation and really important because we start talking about attraction in a number of different ways as demisexuals. And there's actually two different kinds of attractions, primary and secondary, that comes up in this conversation. Now, primary attraction is when you look at someone and you're seeing them and you're like, ooh, I would do the things with them behind closed doors in the bedroom because of how they look or how they're swagger or how they smell or how they just, send those vibes. It's pretty much reading a book by its cover. And speaking of books, actually, I was just reading this lovely version of The ABCs of LGBT on my Kindle by Ash Hardell. It is a lovely resource for all sorts of identity, gender, orientation. And if you ever have questions about how that all works together, I recommend this book. It's great. And Ash is a friend of the show that we've had on before, so go give them some love. But after primary attraction is secondary attraction, when we actually get to know who someone is beyond just their appearance, beyond that first impression, where we talk and we get to feel and find out who they are as a fully formed person, whether their sense of humor is involved, their ethics, their personal interest and hobbies. And that is where we shine. And that can sometimes take anywhere from a few minutes to a few weeks. And also doesn't mean that sex is gonna happen, but that's how we form these romantic bonds. But it's within that kind of time frame, but also within that spectrum of demisexuality, because it is a spectrum where sometimes we feel a lot of sexual attraction and sometimes we feel no sexual attraction. But demisexuals can fall anywhere within that. It also comes with its own flag, which is very similar to the asexual flag in a number of different ways, with the same colors, but a little bit different formation. And to anyone who says that having too many identities or definitions, I would say that knowledge is a critical part of acceptance. Learning about new identities broadens our perspective on the human experience, heightens our empathy, and allows us to just see the world and the different valuable perspectives that exist within it. Wow, that was very deep. Well, actually, that was just a quote from the book, so thank you, Ash. But within defining and using identities, we usually are using these to add to someone, to broaden who they are. But I want to challenge the definition of demisexuality and just our perspective on identities by saying that demisexuality isn't so much adding, but talking about a subtraction of something within this equation. Or maybe more so, something that's missing is a better definition. But again, I can't claim the words that are used in this quote because this comes directly from Olivia Davis, a demisexual, who once wrote, "Demisexuality is about desire and arousal, not just sex and who we do it with. It's not merely that I'm only interested in having sex with people that I love. It's also that I feel a complete absence of desire or sexual feelings towards everyone else, ever. What makes me demisexual is that absence." Meaning again that demisexuals only experience that sexual attraction with someone that they have that emotional bond with. But also to that point, forming an emotional bond does not mean I'm gonna have sex with you. Okay? I have plenty of friends that I have emotional bonds with. That doesn't mean I wanna bone them. Oh, so it's at this point that I just wanna like point out my outfit. Like I got the gray of the demisexual flag, the white, the black, and the purple. I'm a lot, I apologize. So are we all on the same page? We all get that the emotional bond needs to happen there before we can actually form an attraction, right? Now, let's talk about and get into not only my experiences, but some misconceptions, some questions, and how to talk about maybe having an emotional attraction or a relationship with someone who's demisexual. Now, as a demisexual person, my experience is going to be my own. So this next bit where I kind of talk about kink and porn and just having sex in general, because asexuals can have sex and do enjoy sex sometimes. Again, it's a spectrum. And I'm also in a relationship with someone who is a gay cis man as well. So it's possible to have a relationship. Let me just tell you, like, if I'm an example of anything, it's that. I'm not a good example for many things, but welcome for existing. And while in my partner's case, I can obviously tell that he is a very handsome, attractive, I mean, just look, he's cute. My sexual attraction doesn't rely on just his looks. My attraction to him relies solely on who he is as a goofy, silly weirdo that I love and adore, because we have fun with sex and we can talk about our feelings and emotions, and I just love who he is as a person. But that does not mean that I do not enjoy sex. Now, I've done sex work for years. I have the only you-know-what, link down below. And I used to do a lot of studio porn, which a lot of the times meant you were going to be having sex with one to a number of people that you don't know. And in my case, it was always gay men. But I hear you ask, how do you form an emotional connection or any sort of sexual connection with someone that you might not have ever met or have only seen pictures of online? Well, that is where we start talking about some of the scenes that I did throughout my years. When I was first starting out porn, I didn't know what demisexual was. I didn't identify as it. I identified as a very closeted kid that had just come out a few years back and was really sexually frustrated and wanted to have sex. And that absolutely built into who I was as a person back then. But I was doing scenes with a number of different studios and slowly realizing that sometimes I had amazing sex with a person and an amazing connection, and we would talk about musicals and anime and what we were into video game wise. And like, I really, really enjoyed those scenes. One time I had a scene with this lovely producer type, arguably one of the most attractive men I'd had sex with, and I was able to see that. But what really drew me to him was his nerdiness, that he was trying to produce a play, a musical at the same time that was about porn, and that we just really got along and were able to talk about our lives, laugh, and not take ourselves too seriously, even while having sex on set in front of a bunch of cameras. Also, there was a Black Widow in one of the scenes that's a whole other story, but we shared that experience together and we were able to laugh about it, which I feel like made us closer. Which, do that, demisexuals can have casual sex too. It just usually takes a minute to get there. Now, before this one scene that went really well with the guy writing a porn musical, we had gone back and forth a ton in DMs. We had gotten each other's numbers and texted. We got to know each other in such an intimate way that when we finally met each other for the very first time, it was like meeting a friend that you hadn't seen in forever. And there was an emotional bond there because we had chatted and got to know each other. So the sex was pretty good. I mean, and stimulating for me, like emotionally. Great. Sexually, amazing. But I know that that wouldn't have been the case if I hadn't got to know him better, because as I continued to do scenes where I was able to get off because I was able to fantasize in my head with some of them, I was slowly learning that my attraction to my co-stars, which I was able to differentiate between relationship and work, was also solely built upon how I liked them as a person. There was one scene, which was with a number of different people, that I had the hardest time staying hard, well, ironically staying hard. And that's because the night before, I was sharing a room with this lovely gentleman. He was on his phone all night with his girlfriend. And I'm not against bi guys. I need to make that very clear. But he was loud, he was obnoxious, he was smoking pot in the room, and we were told we would not get paid if we were caught smoking anything. And just generally a real big douchebag, for lack of a better term. Like, he was really rude. And so that entire day, I was not even able to get turned on and had to kind of go inside of my head and fantasize and visualize guys that I did get along with, or think of other flings that I did enjoy having sex with. And so my ability to fantasize there was absolutely incorporated into my time in sex work. And I learned to rely on that a lot as I went through the field, because I learned that that's how I could keep a boner during things. Well, that and a boner pill. Like, boner pills, absolutely necessary for some porn stars. And sometimes I did need it. Other times though, I didn't. And that's where I started getting into kink.com porn a lot and doing kink stuff. I learned that when I had my vision taken away, or when I was put into some sort of restricting sort of position, it was easier for me to fantasize and get inside of my head to really think about the stuff that did turn me on. And I was able to almost flip a switch in a way. It was very meditative. Now, it's not a real relationship. Again, it's a fantasy, and fantasy does not equal reality, which is a whole other thing and topic to talk about that we don't teach in schools. But hey, you know, I'm just saying. And is where my overall view of sex turned very erotic in a fantasy sort of way. I turned towards erotic fiction a bunch whenever I was just looking to get off or looking to stay hard on set. And while I didn't know that I was demisexual at the time, I slowly was learning that I needed this kind of bond or emotional connection to help me get through that. The mind is a wonderful, crazy, terrible enigma wrapped within mucous membranes, wrapped within chemicals and other things. Humans are fascinating. Could you imagine demisexual porn? Like porn specifically made for demisexuals? Oh, hello. I see here that you are objectively very attractive, but tell me about your personality. Well, I really like anime, and I love video games, and like, I love a good sense of humor in a guy that I'm just like, you know, laughing but crying. Puns, oh my God, turn me on so much. Yeah, what? Humans are fascinating. And then as far as sex and kinky things go, I really loved the one comment that I saw online when I was just kind of trying to suss out what people wanted to know about demisexuality, which pointed out why sex educators on average identify as ace, or in this case, demisexual, so often. And that kind of got me thinking, like, there are so many people, at least in my mentions, that kind of understood what demisexuality was, but then didn't know if they were one, because yeah, emotional connections exist, and yeah, you need to have an emotional connection with someone usually to have a relationship, but does that make me demisexual? The big differentiator there being, you can always have criteria for who you're into. Like, that's something you can generally choose to accept or not. Like, you can go home with someone if you want from a bar based on a few different things or not. Whereas demisexuals, that's not really an option. Like, I'm not gonna be interested in that person. I can't just ignore a few things that aren't like great or aren't there for me. I don't have that choice. My orientation is what draws me to that person after I get to know them and make that bond. But to the whole sex educator comment, I think that a lot of sex educators know how and learn how to identify because they do the work of educating themselves. Like, could you imagine if we taught all of these different identities within schools, how many kids would, and are already at large, becoming more and more queer, would actually come out of high school knowing exactly what they were into, who they were into, and how they identified. Like, that would be so groundbreaking and would allow us to be able to understand each other a bit more. As we know, teaching LGBTQ inclusive sorts of curriculums actually leads to less bullying and more acceptance on the whole, as well as just happier kids. So like, I wish we actually taught more of this. And as it just goes to show, Sex educators that get to actually do the work of educating themselves do generally identify as something a little bit different from the norm. The norm. Why straight is the norm because society decides that. But does that make sense? Listens for comment down below if that makes sense. It's like trying to color with a box of crayons. If you only have a pink crayon and a blue crayon, those are the only colors you're gonna know how to color with. But what if you actually knew that there was an entire spectrum of crayons, a bunch of colors, 50 different shades of gray right there? You're gonna choose the shades that you identify with and you like the most. If you don't know what the options are, you're not gonna know how to paint with all the colors of the wind. That was a Disney reference. But that does kind of touch base on how demisexual porn does exist, or at least porn that demisexuals can relate to and get into. And that's usually porn that's either like erotic fiction I can really get into because you kind of get the insight into the people that you're reading as you go through it. But I'm also really into porn that has sounds that show that someone is connecting or really enjoying themselves. Not like the sounds, but like the like really erotic, but also emotive sorts of sounds, if that makes sense. Being able to tell that people are having fun and getting off together is really, really intimate. Or say like people that do like vlog porn, or even porn stars or adult performers, however you want to refer to them, that use vlogs of maybe not even sex to show who they are as a person and what they enjoy. I find that really sexy in some ways sometimes. And all that wrapped together in a big demisexual box of emotion. Oh God, it's a box of, oh Jesus, it's closing in. I think that talking about how I worked out my kinks, unintended, is also super relevant because I'm a very kinky person. And as we discussed in the Kinks at Pride, asexual people can be kinky. You don't have to have sex to enjoy kink, but I tend to enjoy both of those things, sex and kink. Also pride, I guess. Well, you get the point. And when I started thinking about my own kinks and my own identity as a demisexual, I started kind of unpacking why I'm into the things I am. Like for instance, puppy play is a kink that I'm not only non-sexually interested in and enjoy, but very much enjoy in a sexual sense as well. And I think that's because like getting into that headspace of animal role play, dogs are very emotive and emotional beings in which when they find someone that they connect to, like their owner or their master or dom or whoever, there is so much emotion happening there. Unfiltered, raw emotion in such a way that I absolutely understand why puppy play is my biggest kink and that I'm really into it. It's a way in which I can connect with my partner, Chris, because it's loving. It is the most unfiltered version of myself just being affectionate and cuddly. And yeah, sometimes a little sexual, but at the heart of it, it has to deal with emotions and just being able to show my emotions as I'm feeling them in the moment, which is really beautiful in a way. Aw. And if you don't think asexual people can get kinky, well, boy, do I have a bone to pick with you. Or maybe you're gonna be a little pissed with my definitions. So that's my experience. That's why I'm into the things I'm into. That's kind of my journey, figuring out who I was and starting as, you know, the cis gay boy who just wants hot sex to like understanding who I am as a fully formed person who is complex. And also kind of playing into my relationship and why I am in love with and have this romantic relationship with this amazing person who is also, and there's no argument here, very attractive. Look at him. Look at him. Little. Which leads us to chapter 3. How do you have a relationship with a demisexual? Because it sounds complicated. Well, communicate with them. Being able to talk about and communicate at the very heart of every relationship is what helps drive the relationship. For demisexual especially, over communicating is not a bad thing usually. Ask them how they identify. Maybe get their love languages. Maybe use or draw out some spectrum charts about identity and who you are, like I was talking about before in Ash's book, which I'll link down below. There's some really good helpful resources in that. Try talking about what you enjoy with your partner who might be demisexual and what makes you shine, but also highlight what makes them shine and why you are attracted to them or interested in having a relationship. Being able to appreciate someone using your words or using just using text even helps them to understand who you are beyond just your looks and beyond just those first impressions. Like for me, talking to someone's great. Knowing what they did this week, cool, super awesome, very fun. But the second that that person starts talking about their hobbies and really you see their eyes light up with their interest in what they do or want to do more of, like that is what I find sexy. Passion for me is sexy. A sense of humor is sexy. Knowing that someone takes care of themselves is super sexy. Do what you say you're gonna do, mean what you say, be truthful, be honest, and if you're not good at that and you still are looking to have a relationship with someone who identifies as demisexual, start small and just be deliberate with what you do and how you do it. Building that trust is imperative to someone who is demisexual because they are looking at you at the things that you do and say. They are hearing what you say and they are internalizing that because that is how they are forming their attraction to you. And they are forming that emotional bond, which allows that attraction. But also show your vulnerability and show your feelings. Because when I see my partner being vulnerable, talking about maybe if they fucked up or just being honest with me, that's telling me that they care about my emotions. They apologize when they do something wrong because they care that I feel heard and valued. I think that, regardless of a demisexual person or not, is very important to a relationship, but is a make or break thing for a demisexual. And finally, no video, at least of mine, is without last final thoughts and misconceptions that come along with whatever we're talking about, be it kink, an identity, sexuality, or relationships. Which brings us to the misconceptions around demisexuality. Asking for your guys' input, I got tons of misconceptions just through your questions that you were asking. And that's not any shade towards you because we're gonna talk about them. The first one being, is being demisexual a choice? No, that's just how I'm made. That's how my brain and my chemicals all work and how I identify. A lot of people think that demisexuals are choosing to abstain from sex or are just being prudish because they're sex averse. And that's a lot to unpack. Because when I'm seeing someone and I'm like, okay, that person is objectively very hot. Like, I can see that I have eyes. So that means you're attracted to them. No. Oh, so you're just being a prude? No, I'm not being shallow and actually looking to want to get to know the person before I take their clothes off and have sex with them, which is a very intimate thing. Like, yeah, Hugh Jackman, he is a sexy guy. But what makes me wanna, do the Jackman is that he's talented. He's an actor. He knows how to sing very well. Hello, greatest showman, you can show me some. He seems to have a sense of humor. Not to mention, there were tons of rumors that he might be a closeted gay, and his response to that was like, I've kissed guys in like acting, but like, I'm not gonna get offended if someone thinks I'm gay because like, that's not something to get offended to. Thank you. And I think that's really attractive. Just being okay with your sexuality, super attractive to me. So like Hugh Jackman, if you ever wanna just like talk or maybe you wanna go through some lines or like, if Wolverine ever has like, a sexy, relationship with like a sidekick of some kind. Or how about the misconception that demisexual people just always have a low or have no sex drive? Not the case. Once I'm in a relationship, the sex drive is there. Trust me. I have videos to prove, we don't have to talk about that. Everybody's on that spectrum, and while some asexuals, which might also identify as demi, are on that low sex drive, not everyone's gonna be the same, and I find that mine fluctuates based on the relationship. Or how about the misconception that people have that demisexuals have to be in love with someone in order to feel sexual attraction, which is not the case. Again, I have tons of friends that I do have an emotional connection with that I would love to, or maybe I already have, had sex with, but I'm not in love with them. Like, yeah, if there's chemistry with a friend who I have a very, very close emotional connection with, maybe allegedly we've had sex, but I'm still able to respect boundaries. Like, I can read signs and I can read body language, and I'm not just forcing myself on anyone that I have emotional bonds with. So an emotional bond equals attraction? No. We've already talked about that. That is one of the silliest misconceptions. That is the definition of demisexuality, is having that emotional bond leading to the attraction. But that doesn't mean having one means I'm going to have the other, which actually kind of leads into the next misconception being like, okay, well, like if you have this emotional bond with a person, that person could be a man, a woman, non-binary, trans, bi, gay, like it could be anyone, right? What's the difference? What if you're pansexual? Point of clarity, I am pansexual. I love jokes. Now, most of the orientations that label someone like homosexual, heterosexual, bisexual, pansexual refer to the genders that we are interested and attracted to. Demisexual is different here because it refers to the nature of the relationship that we are trying to build that leads to that sexual attraction. So together with my gender identity and my sexual identity and who I'm attracted to, we also have to add demisexuality in there, but it still all works together. I am still a gay demisexual man interested in gay guys who are also nerdy and who also have a sense of humor and love puns, but also enjoy like cuddling up to a superhero movie and just eating tons of snack food. And like if they are Hugh Jackman, great. So then why even need demisexuality? Why not just rely on asexuality, but with flexibility? And like, I like the idea of asexuality with flexibility, which is exactly what demisexuality is. But having the term demisexuality allows me to literally say I'm kind of right in the middle of having sexual attraction and not. I'm able to explain that. And it actually starts a conversation, which I enjoy having because it makes people think and it makes people then wonder what else exists in our spectrum of sex. Again, having words gives us power. Being able to label ourselves gives us a place to fit into the weird puzzle that is our human experience. And I like having the puzzle pieces to put together and explain who I am as a fully formed person. If that bothers someone, I'm not gonna force it in their face. I'm a gay guy if that's really what you need to call me, but it still is really disrespectful to, when I make it very clear and you understand where I'm coming from, not use the terms that I respectfully ask to be used. And for whatever reason, there's a whole misconception around like the fact that I must be terrible at flirting. I will have you know I am very good at flirting. And while some asexual people don't flirt because they're not interested in doing the sex, some demisexuals are very good at it. We not only focus on the sexy parts of a person, we focus on the jokes and the puns and the humor and the fully formed person. Like we pay attention to a lot of things that some people get distracted by the sexy parts and don't actually talk about or look at. So checkmate. Emphasis on mate if I have an emotional connection with you. Well, maybe you're just against having sex because you had some sort of trauma and you can't work through it. I respect that some people might have trauma, or they might just not be able to form certain connections or bonds because of bad sex or bad relationships in the past. I think that's absolutely valid. In my case, I have not had such bad relationships that I feel like that's holding me back. In fact, I've had arguably so much sex that I know what I like sexually, but when it comes to a relationship and being able to form a relationship, I know that I need that emotional bond. And that's not holding me back, but just not present for the people that I have not gotten to know and build that bond with. But still, if you're feeling like you got some emotions or weird feelings about a relationship that you need to unpack, go see a therapist. Therapy is good. Well, then there must just be a tipping point where enough emotions equal attraction. No, we're all different. Some of the emotional bits or some of the aspects of that person push me over the edge, but I can't just draw a line in the sand because humans are complex and different things turn us on about different people depending on how they express them. So no, there's no exact ballpark. But I could definitely like draw you like a little chart, like those spectrum charts I was telling you about, and then we can kind of decompress and dissect it. Which brings us to our final thoughts on the topic. I did not start out by just knowing who I was. Hell, I didn't know I was gay until I was somewhere around 11 or 12, and I certainly didn't know I was demisexual until somewhere around 20 because I didn't have the terminology and I didn't have the experience sexually, emotionally, attraction-wise to know what felt good. And I had plenty of bad relationships, trust me. But I got to the point where I knew who I liked, what I liked, and how I liked people that made me feel more comfortable talking about it. So hey, if you might be demisexual and you just don't know it yet, that's okay. You'll figure it out. But also, my experience is unique to me. So grasp onto the things in this video that make you feel valid. And if you're not demisexual, hopefully you've learned something from it. That's okay too. And if you want to have a conversation, you can do that in comments below. I love reading other people's takes on things and just kind of going back and forth. Again, being respectful, please. But if all else fails, please just let me know what you thought of the video. Leave a like if you like likes. Is that how you do it, Daddy? Ring the bell because videos don't generally go out into those sub boxes because experiences around sex are seen as not advertiser friendly. And don't forget to subscribe to What's a Safeword, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Oh, I didn't forget. I always forget. And don't forget I have a safe word. Today's safe word is Demi Lovato, because I don't know what would just stop a sex scene as much as just saying Demi Lovato, Demi Lovato, Demi Lovato. I cracked myself up.